And welcome to Unpacking Endpoint Management, a very special episode to close out the year 2023. We are coming to you live from the Microsoft office in Denver, Colorado, as featured guest of the local MEM user group here in Denver. And for that reason, we're actually doing something different. We're actually presenting the show in front of a live studio audience. Woo! Yes. And if you're middle-aged like me, you probably remember growing up with shows that were recorded live before a studio audience. But for those of you who are young, just disregard that millennial or that. I guess I'm a Gen Xer. We'll disregard that, and let's get right down to it. So for this particular episode of Unpacking Endpoint Management, we are asking you why. We call it the why episode. In particular, why haven't you moved to Windows 11? Number one. And number two, if you have, why aren't you managing with Intune if you're not? And that includes those of you out there still living in the world of config manager. We just want to know why. So with me, again, I'm Steve Thomas. I'm a product manager at Microsoft, and with me is Principal Product Manager Danny Guillory. You know why they call him Principal Product Manager? Because he's the product manager.
I don't know about that.
So what we're going to do with this episode, first and foremost, we're going to be taking questions from not just the normal audience we have over the tech community, but we'll also be hearing questions live coming from our in-room studio audience. But for those of you who are watching the live stream, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, because I've got my monitoring desk right here, and I will be able to keep track of those questions as they come in, and we will address as many of them as we can. And we might even have right answers, or at least useful answers.
Try.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? We can't always guarantee that, though. So, Danny, how you been?
So far, so good. It's going to be an interesting hour.
It's definitely going to be an interesting hour. Danny, you've been very busy, man. You've had, you've had Ignite, you've had MMS. How was that this year? I mean,
it's busy. It's interesting. A lot of the Copilot, a lot of the AI things, a lot of things we're doing around device management. So busy, interesting, exciting. It was the first two times. I think this is now third time I've left my house for work this year. So I kind of forgot how to travel. But it's not bad. Get back into it.
Yeah, I don't think I've been in a Microsoft office in months, actually, myself.
Yeah,
so it's kind of cool to be here.
While.
So let's go ahead and open up the, my producer said, don't forget about the Technical Takeoff, which actually just commenced as well this week.
Oh, yeah.
And the Technical Takeoff is really popular, especially because it's technical for the most part. You know, a lot of times at these conferences, especially with Ignite, we get into, kind of the L100, kind of the salesy, marketing kind of stuff. And the Technical Takeoff is very popular because we do go very deep into many technical areas, sometimes L300, L400. But I'm going to poll the studio audience here. How many of you guys are managing estates that have moved to Windows 11, at least 50% of your estate?
I'm the only one 10 left.
We're piloting it to the IT department.
Okay, we've got some pilots. We've got about half the hands raised here.
How many still on configuration management?
Well, hybrid, come on now.
Yeah.
Okay. How many co-managed then?
Yeah.
Okay.
How many fully cloud managed with Intune?
Ooh.
All right.
Okay, so we do have a couple of folks who have achieved fully cloud managed devices with Intune, or also Intune native. But for those of you who are watching live on the stream, most are still using Config Manager, and about half are somewhat partially or fully onto Windows 11. So what's holding you back? Where are you struggling?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in why. And if there's stuff on the chat, I want to hear that.
Yes, sir.
Server side of the world. Just because we use Config Manager to do the server side, or if I know Intune doesn't do the server side yet.
Okay.
That's a good reason, actually. So Is
So-
that the only reason though? Like, are your workstations still in configuration manager?
Workstations are still in config manager. We're moving towards Intune. So that's our big move. We're still Windows 10, unfortunately. I think mainly because of all the software things that we use haven't been certified for 11 yet, maybe. Not sure. But that's a big chunk of it, yeah.
So it comes down to Windows Server and Windows 10 devices. You still want to be able to uniformly manage them from a single pane of glass as far as
Like
tools.
it, yeah.
Okay. No, that's totally reasonable. Totally reasonable. How about others? Yes, sir.
Similar answer there, but also the policy, specifically policy for like third-party apps that we still manage. And I know Intune has added some capabilities there recently to do like third-party ADMX import, but we just haven't got there.
Okay. So we're hearing group policy, primarily for third-party ADMX. For those of you who are listening on the stream, that's definitely a good reason. And of course, Intune is making strides in that area to improve those capabilities. What else?
For us, it's mostly just not enough time in the day.
The enemy of all time.
Like, we're working on it, but we
Right.
have all kinds of other stuff to do too.
Okay. No one's mentioned hardware issues. How many of you are running into potential problems migrating because of hardware compatibility?
Yeah, that's some of it too. We've got older systems that I know when I've looked at some of them, it says, nope, it's not capable of running Windows 11 yet. So
Right.
we have to replace hardware in some cases as well.
Is anybody waiting on a refresh, like a device refresh to go to 11? Okay, that's interesting. I'd be interested if there were customers still waiting on a device refresh to go to Windows 11. I would have thought a customer would have been through a device refresh already, but maybe they haven't. So sometimes cycles go from 3 to 5 to 7 years. I'm sure with the whole economic crisis, it's expanded even further, pulling stuff out of the trash sometimes.
Right, 3 to 4 years, or if you work for Microsoft, 5 to 6. Who knows? Who knows?
We
Uh,
use our devices for a long time.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
I've seen a lot more of that. I joke about pulling stuff out of trash. I have seen companies that have had a whole section of deprecated models. They're like, yeah, we probably can get another year or two out of these based on whatever their application estate is or requirements are to run the business. So it happens.
We have a question. What about people that say, I'm all in to manage all devices from the cloud, but I'm still missing policies for Windows 11 and Intune? For example, shared device mode with OneDrive sync. We can do it, but we have to configure OMA URI. And, everyone knows that OMA URI can be
A thing.
a thing,
Yeah.
yes. One character out of place, or people who like to copy and paste and accidentally paste in the smart quotes because they were doing it from Word or something to that effect.
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
creates, problems there.
I don't disagree with that. But I don't think that because it's a challenge that it should stop you. Just because it's a challenge, like a lot of us would not even be here in our own jobs. So we shied away from challenge, right? So yes, it's a little bit of a challenge using OMA RI. If there are policies that are not actually there that you need, I would encourage you to send a happy face smiley feedback. Send the feedback because the team is I call it still happy face smiley face. So the team's actively actually making improvements to that type of stuff. That type of stuff, I don't know why they wouldn't prioritize it, because it helps you manage from the cloud. So usually I have seen them prioritize stuff like that. So I would send it in as feedback, and somebody should be on it.
For those of you who are listening who may be confused at what we're talking about, the native MDM stack in Windows 10 and Windows 11 have many big capabilities designed for a variety of MDM providers to plug into. And the audience member's question was related to things that are in the Windows MDM stack that are not necessarily in the Intune interface, and as a result, they have to do the OMA URI configuration manual.
All right.
Leslie on LinkedIn, hi Leslie, offers thoughts on why not. And they say, switching to Intune is insanely expensive if you want the licensing to take full advantage of it. and Windows 11 is not made for productivity. Ouch, the ref takes a point away. The taskbar alone, we don't need an OS going backwards in time. Okay, well, like I said, we don't censor our questions, obviously, unless there's some trolling or swearing. How do we unpack that, Danny?
Yeah, I don't even know. That's a different type of shovel. I don't know. The comments about the operating system going back, I don't understand. So I probably would need more detail about that one.
There were some things removed from the taskbar that are coming back.
Yeah, I guess some regards I see it could make sense.
We
but
heard
I don't
that.
know.
Other than that, it got moved to the center.
Yeah, I mean,
But, you know,
tomato. It's still there.
it's not like we took away the start button like we did 10, 11 years ago. So, I mean, we're, you know.
You're showing your age. You're really not showing your age.
You don't want me to talk about. My age is C:\\\. That's my age.
I told you this would be an interesting hour. I told you. So yeah, I don't really know how to unpack the comments about the operating system going back.
I assume by licensing she means, or they mean
the
P2,
licensing stuff can't really speak to because
Intune Suite.
me nor Steve actually control licensing. I guess from a customer perspective, because I'm still a customer too, that yes, it could be expensive. But I think making the right connections, talking to your account team, you probably work around some of that stuff. So I would say work with your account team on the pricing and see what they can do for you. Outside of that, I don't have any comments about the other operating system going backwards thing.
So Zeb, this one's coming from Zeb from the tech community. The biggest limitations in Intune today are a lack of software metering, limited hardware inventory with no ability to extend it, no inventory-based groups, aka device collections, buggy autopilot experiences for end users, and no bare metal OSD. Those are things that most larger orgs would have to find a way to replicate or replace.
I feel like that person read my backlog outside of the OSD. Somebody read my backlog.
Yeah, we're still innovating, we're still developing, and we're still working on with Windows Intune. And thank you, Zeb, for confirming Danny's prioritization of his backlog of features to come.
Yeah, a lot of those things are in my backlog. The OSD thing, I'm not the PM for that one. I actually own the app stack in Intune. So I would say you're spot on some of those things. We have talked about them, just not been able to get to prioritize them to get them out into the feature set. Outside of that, we know about them. They're on the radar. I can't tell you if they're near the center or far out, but we do know about them.
Okay, so I have a feeling we're gonna get a lot of this again tonight or today. Michael, from the tech community, what's the plan for server management over Intune? Are there any plans?
That's going to be a low note.
Otherwise, it would be nice if you can share my idea for application management over Azure Arc for servers to our colleagues over in Azure Arc. Oh, I will. Yes, definitely. So Azure Arc is kind of our recommended approach, kind of a combination of leveraging Azure Arc and Windows Admin Center for managing your Windows server estates and other estates that hopefully you are in the process of considering migrating those over to Azure as well. But even for your on-premises servers as well, I know that there are still some parity issues when you compare Azure Arc with something that is well-baked as Config Manager is. Config Manager is a 30-year legacy that continues to grow, actually 30-plus year legacy that's continuing to grow. And we understand that the server component is a major indirect blocker for Windows endpoints actually being managed exclusively by Intune. From Jannik on LinkedIn, the biggest thing about Windows 11 is user training, but I do feel the newer generation is more adaptable. Oh, okay, all right, okay. I want to ask the audience this.
I already know where it's going.
How hard is Windows 11 for your new users? Really? Be honest.
Anybody have problems switching your users from 10 to 11?
Our IT
Nobody in the
department
room
likes
at
it.
least. Nobody in the
That's the one we have on it so far.
Go ahead.
I think if the user's like greenfield, they've never used it before, it's really
Fine.
intuitive, it's easy. But if their comic books up before, they have muscle memory, and there's just a little bit of enough change that's disconcerting. Now, whether it's like options are hidden, you have to do more clicks to get to menu items, or things are moved, and challenges like that. There's always a challenge to retrain muscle memory.
Well, taking rename off of the context menu, I will acknowledge that's been my only complaint with Windows 11. Seriously, is they took rename off of the right click context menu. You know, where you have to go to more options. But
I didn't know that, and now I'm mad. Because that's how you get the file name real
All right,
quick.
hey,
You
shut
say
the- shut the
rename and then
feedback.
control
okay.
C.
I have a hack for that, by the way, to bring it back. Yes, sir.
Hold shift, right?
Yep. Control shift.
Figure that out, but that was actually.
Look at that, sharing tips and tricks.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone published all the ways to get it to work like 10, that'd be awesome.
So funny trick. Probably ain't a trick, just something I did. I had again, I tell you, I'm still a customer. So one of my customers, they complained about Windows 11 start button being in the middle. So one of their shadow IT, I guess you would call it, figured out the setting to make it go back to the left. This is how bad of an IT person I am. I created a proactive remediation to reverse it and put it back to the middle. Just like get used to it, change is happening. So anyway,
But in all seriousness, for those of you out there who want some guidance for your users in understanding the basic differences between Windows 10 and Windows 11, if you're watching the stream, we're going to put a URL up on the screen here, aka.ms/day one with Windows 11 with the D and day capitalized and the W in Windows 11 capitalized, and you'll see it on this on the crawl is what
I
they
don't
call
think
it.
it's case sensitive though.
I
I don't think it's case sensitive.
I'm just being careful. That's all. I'm being careful. I'm just being thorough. Okay. Also, we have the skilling snack, which I keep calling Scooby Snack for some reason. But the Windows product group has been coming out with these skilling snacks available on the tech community, and they have one called aka.ms/snack. Capital S / user readiness with the U and the R capitalized. Just in case it's case sensitive. Just in case.
Need to phone the producer and ask her about.
Okay, the producer has told me it's not case sensitive, so
This is how I have to make it through the hour with you. Just laugh.
and he's supposed to be the serious one. He's supposed to be the serious part of it.
Yeah, I guess so. Right?
All right, so okay, we have a comment from, I think it's Kayyum from LinkedIn, and oh boy, custom reports in Intune is a big challenge.
Of course. Tell me something I don't know.
Okay, what's being done about it, Jannik?
Discussion, talking. That's about it.
Okay, do we have any
On the radar.
on the radar?
Not in the middle of the radar.
Not in the middle of the radar. Okay.
But it is something again, there's a lot of things, and this is a constant trend, definitely when I talk to customers, be it in a feature PM role, there's a lot of things that customers bring up that we know about. I encourage you to continue asking those things. The more you ask, the more pressure we put back internal, but it still just creates the bigger, I'd say, the prioritization issue that basically any company has when they're trying to figure out what to develop for their customers, their community, or their service. So we got a lot of ask. And I can tell, I'm going to open this can of worms. I've been asked for sequencing for 2 years. Wrote the spec, we just haven't gotten to it. Hasn't been prioritized yet by our organization, by my business unit. If I gave you all of the things, the list of the backlog, and said pick 2, there's no way to answer that as the right question. So we go based after a lot of different signals, a lot of customer feedback, what's worked for the business. There's a whole bunch of other variables that we consider what we actually go after. So keep bringing this stuff up. I say that not to discourage people from bringing it up, but bring it up, fight for what you want, because guess what? I did the exact same thing when I was you guys. And I wish that there were people that went around and talked to customers like I do, because instead of, I just filled out a form. You guys got actually somebody to yell at, so I did not. So take advantage of it.
Aggregated evidence is a huge way to move boulders within product groups, especially for very mature and big products. And so if you are going to file feedback and you notice that the feedback has been filed, don't just close the tool, please upvote it. Upvoting is just, I mean, you might as well have refiled. I mean, it's the easiest way to file feedback is to find that somebody else has filed that feedback, and you can just simply +1 that. And then log in from another account and +1 it again. And then get your mom to log in and +1 it. No.
Yeah, the feedback thing, like, I'll give you my perspective when I was a customer and how it's different now being in Microsoft. I would fill out a form. Anybody remember user voice? Like, we had user voice. I'd put something in there. I thought it went to a black hole. Nobody ever paid attention. I'd have to try to go to a conference and grab the guy speaking and give him all my complaints. So now being on the other side of that, I get emails weekly about all the things that customers put about that feedback. So it is actually impactful. We bring it to what we call our planning meetings. And again, here's 10 things that you guys have asked for. We need to get built. We only get to pick so many out of there depending on what the size is. So it's a hard prioritization process for our business unit, but it does happen. We get things as close as we can. And all of this actually comes into a bucket that I'll tell you as we have conversations. Again, even conversation I had yesterday with my manager. We might have found a way to kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone, but that's how it works. But keep asking, keep pushing. Don't fill out a form and don't follow up on it. Definitely follow up. Find somebody. I like to be reachable on the socials, at least Twitter. So reach out, complain, talk. If you've got some connection inside Microsoft, say you need to meet with me or whoever owns that capability. Anyway, either way, I'm always open to feedback, complain about it. I love the pats on the backs, but the pats on the back can make me want to go do the other things better, faster for you.
Now, don't forget our training. We're not supposed to be doing things like saying killing 2 birds with 1 stone. We're supposed to be saying solving multiple problems with 1 solution.
I just took that training last night.
Sorry, yes. All right. Here's a good question. This is from Serene on LinkedIn. And any new capabilities in Intune in the BYOD space, unmanaged devices, man for thick Office 365 clients? Okay.
You got that.
We've been waiting for this for a long time. The pandemic made us realize a lot of things in the Windows space in terms of true parity with the mobile space, and that there really wasn't no such thing as true Windows MAM at the time. MAM in the same context and trust and reliability that you would have over in the mobile device space, like in your Apple and Android devices. But the problem with that was mainly platform dependencies and other issues that went beyond the scope of just managing that. So, at the time we were implementing, the concept of MAM, and I put MAM in quotation marks, leveraging Windows Information Protection. And Windows Information Protection, of course, as you know, has been deprecated. And what's been coming down the pipeline involves something we call Win32 process isolation. And the good news is the mechanisms in the platform have been put in place. Another reason for you to move to Windows 11, another reason for you to move to Windows 11, especially for your personal devices that may be wanting to access corporate resources. But this has to be prioritized from what application do we want to first tackle with this? And when you start thinking about this strategically, the number one app that you want to be able to truly MAM manage in, did I invent a word there, MAM manage, or phrase there?
I wasn't going to let you slide, but you.
Is the browser. And so the focus for MAM on Edge is kind of a priority, especially because if you need to edit and access protected, Office or excuse me, Microsoft 365 apps. Can't believe they got rid of all this. at least the term office. But anyway, I digress. Microsoft 365 apps can, of course, be accessed through a browser. And so that's one of the reasons why it was decided that Man for Edge would be probably the first priority. But you're going to start seeing more and more of these, what we call, thick client apps become MAM enabled in the future.
There you go. Good stuff.
All right. And of course, our producer has reminded me to remind you that speaking of MAM for Windows, there is an excellent technical takeoff session that was recorded and is available as well. And of course, you can access all the technical takeoff sessions on the Microsoft Tech community. And of course, the producer is already there with the crawl, and the URL is aka.ms/tt/MAM for Windows, not K-sensitive. Okay, LinkedIn is on fire today. All right. Daniel on LinkedIn offers this. Windows 11 migration is not that hard. A lot of complaints about changes.
There's a lot of hums about.
But mainly coming from Windows 11 having a bad rep at the start. Most of them are very accepting. And this is coming from Germany.
Okay.
Thank you, Daniel.
For watching. It's kind of late, but yeah.
All right. We have a question. Will there be a possibility for proactive remediation to be available in Business Premium? I'm not sure I follow the question.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know the answer to that one.
Are we talking about
I could enlighten the question.
Yes.
Proper remediation is normally tied to the Windows E3 license, but that's not aligned with the Windows or the Business Premium licenses. So you're not actually entitled to use proper remediation to prove.
Oh, yeah. I don't know of any plans to do that right now.
It's a common question because there's a lot of smaller companies that aren't on Windows E3. They're all
Yeah. When he rephrased the question, I understood, but I don't know if we're not part of the BU, so we don't know if they're going to do that.
Yeah, we don't know the licensing structure changes that might be coming down the pipeline.
And Steve and Dan, just something to take that. This is probably one of like 10 questions in this area of feature gaps in Business Premium.
Yep, it makes sense.
So, you're talking about the Intune suite?
No.
Oh, Business Premium.
It's just based into.
Okay. We have so many SKUs and licenses, man. All right.
I'll bring it back. Good comment, good feedback. I'll bring it back.
Matias on LinkedIn comments, the Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration can be painful. The in-place upgrade is not like a simple feature update. I have a long list of issues at the office. Just to name one, PowerShell modules are not migrated and have to be reinstalled.
Just to be honest, I didn't know people still did it in place migration. Anybody did try Windows 10 to 11 in place? Did you like it?
Oh, sure.
I did it once, but I had to rebuild the machine.
They like that. That's what I know happens 90% of the time. It gets to whatever the destination is, and you squint, and you look, you're like, yeah, something's wrong with this. But I mean,
so did we finally Jedi mind trick enough people to do IPUs on Windows 10 to Windows 10 to Windows 10 that when Windows 10 to 11 came along, they just did IPUs? That's great.
I don't know.
Well, not that great for Matias, but
I wouldn't have done it. But I mean, I like showing my age. I stopped doing in-place upgrades from 98 to anything.
But I would have filed a feedback on the PowerShell modules not being migrated. I mean, to me, that sounds like a compatibility issue there.
I think in the end, they're probably better off still just doing the rebuilding it anyway. But that's just my opinion. I would love to. I mean, if the IPU is that important to him, he should definitely file feedback. If it's that important, he should file feedback and get the right team on that.
But I would not have expected a Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration to be as streamlined as, especially the last more recent Windows 10 feature updates.
Yeah.
Going from Windows 10 to Windows 10.
The process has improved for sure. I don't think you still end up in the destination without squinting and I probably just need to rebuild this. I mean, the process has definitely been improved. I'm an old head. I gave up on it a long time ago.
Well, I have to keep test Windows 11 devices around for normal upgrade
Yeah,
behavior
yeah.
because, if you're like Danny and I, we're stuck on inner rings. We call it dog food. So we actually have an update about every other day forced upon us. And that's a full operating system upgrade because we're doing, and of course, many of you are probably doing insider builds as well. So if you're like stuck, if you're like doing the Canary insider build, that's kind of, or the developer insider build, that's kind of what the experience Danny and I live, every day when we're talking about our actual work machines because we really don't have a choice in the matter. But all right,
What's next?
of course, Danny, this is for you.
Skip.
This is from Linus on LinkedIn. When will I see task sequencing in Intune?
Next question. Again, something we know about. I'm not inclined to like totally jump and prioritize it. I do realize that task sequences gave customers a predictable way to do stuff. Maybe, again, looking at my backlog, it doesn't pop to the very top. Because if I told you the backlog, you'd probably agree and say, yeah, that's not what I want right now. I'd rather you do 2 or 3 other things. But something I've heard about, again, we've looked at sequencing. I wrote a spec for it about 2 years ago. Just haven't prioritized it. I think giving you a way to sequence applications would lessen the ask for task sequence. I mean, it's a good question. It's just when you keep asking about why you want task sequences, customers will respond. And once you get to the heart of the responses, is they just want something predictable. They want something predictable because of, I'm still a customer. I know how I do it and what I've heard from customers. I have to install this app before this one, or I need to install this setting or run the script before this app installs for various different reasons. Whether you need to pre-configure the install or post-configure the install, there are things that need to be done in a sequential order. So task sequences was the bomb. So yeah, not something we prioritize on the radar, probably not in the dead center of the radar. Good question. Keep them coming.
Alfred on LinkedIn has this to say about why it's hard to move forward. Not having detailed inventory functions in the dashboard is challenging.
Yes. So detailed inventory is something somebody on my team probably will look at while I look at some of the other things. No ETA, no timeline. Inventory has definitely been probably one of the hotter topics we've talked about internally. That it's actually kind of fun because I don't know. I guess I don't know. Just because the question came online, I don't know if your question is asking about like application inventory or hardware inventory, but related to specifically application inventory. I'd say go look at the Discovered Apps report because when I looked at it earlier before I became a feature PM, it was just managed applications. But now it has a ton of stuff about your whole estate, about the applications on your device. So you could, I mean, reach here for a second. There's nothing stopping you from using like Power Automate or some tool to data mine that information and then make adjustments off of that. Granted, yes, I know that needs more work for you. As one individual already said, time is their enemy. Yeah, time is everybody's enemy. But you have ways to do it. If I told you those ways in great detail, your response would be inventory itself from Intune is not fast enough. That definitely is our problem to try to help solve. So you have ways to go do creative inventory stuff. In the end, it will still boil down to, hey, Danny, it's not fast enough. And I would totally agree with that.
Now, for those of you who are watching or on the stream as well, don't forget you can also, post your questions on the Tech Community Live page. And that is aka.ms/join, or wait, no, aka.ms/UEM/Y. I think that's the page for today's show. Why?
Makes sense.
Why don't we have KQL support in Intune?
So I'm definitely not that guy. So the question is,
I made that up. That was me. That wasn't an audience question. That was just me. Okay, so from this is another one from Kayyum on LinkedIn. do you plan to have some step-by-step documentation from Microsoft on using Power BI and Intune connection? So I'm reading into that question, or trying to read into that question, leveraging Power BI to view Intune
The
data.
question would be, because let's say the advanced station could have a database and Microsoft release Power BI,
Yep.
that can
Right.
be backed by that. It gives a lot of flexibility about report building data that's in there. Microsoft, you have to go by a graph instead of making best practice.
So something a little bit more refined, more refined than like the old Intune data warehouse. Right.
The question.
And specifically, I think Power BI is such a useful tool now for,
Uh-huh.
for building dashboards and manipulating data that they ask us like, how would I go from Power BI into? Because yes.
All right. Well, DJM has a question.
That's what I interpreted the question to be. And I remember doing this a long time ago. I don't know if documentation still exists, but there was a step-by-step a long time ago on how to connect Power BI to Intune. I don't know if the documentation still exists, but I do know it's there because I did it after.
I think
I
that was the
connected-
data warehouse.
I don't remember. There is a way though, because between Power BI and Azure Data Explorer, you get what they want. Now, I don't know if the 1, 2, 3 is out there, but there were pieces of it spread among docs at one point.
Okay. Well, that's good feedback. Yes.
It must be out there somewhere because someone on our endpoint team has set up a whole Power BI for our estate, so we can go see like which
Yeah.
computers have this app.
I'm 100%.
Well, and I'm sure there's stuff on GitHub too.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I think they're wanting something like sanctioned official Microsoft
No,
documentation.
fair.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
sure
Sanction.
there is something out there because I remember doing it when I got it, and there was something.
From David on LinkedIn, is it possible to block widget tool command line for end users, but allow install store apps during autopilot provisioning? Okay, it was a misspelling. Sorry. Is it possible to block the winget tool, as in winget client, command line for end users, but allow installation of store apps during autopilot provisioning? So they want to be able to lock down winget.
I have an answer, but I probably shouldn't get it. But I know who to talk to, so I should take that back to Roy as the PM for Winget. So I'll take that back to Roy and make sure Roy answers that. So whoever asked that, hopefully you've put that question on the tech community page where this is being hosted live.
It's on LinkedIn. It'll still be there.
I just need somewhere to point Roy to. So Roy's the PM that needs to answer that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
Let's see. I think I've got all the questions so far coming in on stream. So let's go back to the room here. Yes, sir.
So with the seeming deficiencies of Intune, and the fact that System Center, Endpoint Manager, telemarketing group, then stop renaming stuff, please. The fact that it works great, and frankly, Windows 10 works great. Windows 11, the cheese has moved, and we have to return our users, return our IT group. Why should I move to Windows 11 and Intune? I'm going to reverse the why.
I think you should take that one.
Well, I'll take Windows 11. You take Intune. Okay. Let's be fair.
Fair.
At the end of the day, it's going to be security. And I know you're reading about how Windows 11 is secure from chip to cloud, but I think one of the most painful but positive decisions that the Windows team made was to raise that hardware floor and to mandate certain requirements at the hardware level to ensure that users could be able to take advantage of all of the platform security that's going to be built into Windows 11. And a decision was made to essentially keep that into the forward and not necessarily the past. We hear that Windows with Windows 10, because we had to maintain compatibility with hardware that was 5 years old, 7 years old. I mean, I was running Windows 10 on HPs I bought in 2010 or HPs I bought in 2011. it's a concern, and we really need to ensure that we can take advantage of all the platform level security, the kernel security enhancements. You know, we're redeveloping the kernel, leveraging modern technologies like Rust. You know, we've got capabilities like true device attestation that can only be leveraged by Windows 11. You know, at the end of the day, you're going to be buying and investing in more trust. And I guess that's probably the best I can sum that up. I would probably, if I could get my producer to, you know, pull up a couple of articles from our VP of Windows Engineering from Enterprise and Security, David Weston. You know, the investments that their team is making in you know, technologies like Pluton and some of the advanced, more secure processors. It's a painful process, but it's going to be a necessary process, you know, to move into the future. Now, I'm speaking of the platform, and of course, I'm speaking primarily from a security, primarily from being able to take advantage of things that built on top of Windows to manage it, not just in Intune, but all across Microsoft 365, such as MDE and Purview DLP, can actually take advantage and provide both the OS level protection that you need, but at the same time, not affect the performance. Because a lot of times, a lot of companies have these mechanisms in place, but at times they make the machines completely unusable because there's always a negative impact on performance. And because a lot of this stuff has been written in software and exclusively in software and not in a combination that exists in, you know, not just software, but firmware and actually at the hardware level. But I think I've rambled on enough about that and given Danny enough time to answer the manageability side of that.
Oh, wait, my turn?
Yeah, why should he move to fully cloud managed with Intune?
So there's kind of two answers to that, or two paths. You have your customer that doesn't mind dropping the on-prem estate and then go on cloud, but then you also have existing customers that have existing estate. I like talking to both. I'll probably take the rest of the time to talk about it, but I'm not. Intune has really unique capabilities. And I started with Intune when I was even a PFP, like just looking at, there was an old way where you could like have, when we first did this, where you could like connect config to the cloud, and then that didn't really work. And then Intune took off, and then we went with the whole co-managed route. So if you're existing, going to the cloud is probably easiest if you're using Intune. You could make a few different arguments, and I'm trying not to get on the soapbox about very split hair details. But going to the cloud, I think, is easier with Intune. If you have an existing device, existing estate that exists on-prem, and you want to get to the cloud, you still wind up in this weird paradigm that some people have already said, hey, my server estate is still on SCCM and on-prem, so I can't really get rid of something. Now you gave me more work. I'm totally dropping into this splitting hairs piece. I'm going to stop. But I've seen a lot of more smaller companies be able to drop the on-prem estate and just take a whole hard shift and go cloud. It really just depends on the mindset. Intune itself, I think, is a great management platform. And I think it is has a very good future. Like what drew me to Intune, and speaking personally, I remember being young in my IT career. It's probably very embarrassing, but I went and bought a server from Rackspace, turned it into a domain controller, and tried to deliver a policy, just domain join a device at home. Like gave my domain controller public address. It's like, I'm just trying stuff. But look at all of that effort to build a domain controller, make it external facing, try to connect the device to it so you can get policy over the air. What was I really just trying to do? Manage a device without really needing a domain controller. So like that drew me to Intune and really just cloud management. But then kind of curiosity takes over. So once you start looking at, okay, Intune is a management system, but wait, I've got a ton of other security tools baked into Intune. And then now you're going to start seeing more stuff come into Intune as Microsoft progresses to different areas. So why Intune? Because it has a very, very good now state, and it has a very good future state. So I typically pride myself, because I've used other ones. I pride myself on drinking the Kool-Aid, not showering in it. If I was
Danny, that training, remember, we're not supposed to say things like that.
all right, just took that training last night
Yeah.
too. So anyway, yeah, I would say it has a very good now state, a very good future state. So when it comes to device management, even if I was to go back on the other side, I would ask, why aren't y'all doing more with Intune?
And I want you to know that I'm trying to give you a technical answer here, and I'm going to tell you a funny story here. But before we do that, producer found the link. It's in the crawl for those of you watching at home, aka.ms, security features and Windows 11. If you had $1 million, or let's say $10 million to migrate your estate, and I was a security salesman, I'd be wanting to sell you E5 and Defender. If I was a Purview salesman, I would want to be selling you Purview. But I would advise that you actually ensure that you get your estate migrated to Windows 11. If that means spending money on hardware. And I've been asked that question before. It's like, hey, I've got this limited budget. I can either go E5 or migrate to Windows 11, but I can't do both. What do you want me to do? And I'm not going to say how I answered that because I was in a different role at the time. But nonetheless, I would strongly recommend that if the reason why you are stalled on moving to Windows 11 is because your devices are 7 or 8, 9 years old, I would really recommend that you would tackle that first and get the hardware modernized. Start with the hardware, definitely. Okay, a comment we saw at our kickoff panel discussion for Technical Takeoff, modern management or Windows 11, it's more about and than or. This suggests choices between cloud native or hybrid, but is there another choice of staying fully on premises with config manager?
All right. That's an interesting comment. Now you want to knee jerk to say no, but again, the customer side of me understands why you asked the question. I understand why you want to stay on-prem. I don't think you planning and thinking about where you are now versus where you want to go. I don't think it works. The math works out. The math doesn't math for me, right? If you're on-prem today, you want to stay on-prem, that's fine. There is a validation to it's not broke, don't fix it. I think what's going to happen though is it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The longer you wait, the higher that hurdle becomes for you to jump. So sure, I mean, if you're on-prem today and you want to stay on-prem, fine, stay on-prem. You're just not going to avoid the whole cloud momentum. At some point, whether it's the very simplest thing that takes you to cloud is some application is probably happening in your estate today, because I don't know any estate. At a minimum, a application doesn't have some connectivity to the cloud. You just have to broaden that thought process to not just the application, to now the hardware, the operating system, and the manageability. So once you start broadening that thought, it's a more of a when, not an if. You're going to have to at some point, regardless of who you choose, you'll have to at some point. The longer you wait, the higher that hurdle becomes. The higher that hurdle becomes, the more of the process that's going to be inundated on you. But what you don't see about that whole process is a time scale that nobody's telling you about. Because whenever you have to go to cloud, there'll be a time scale. There'll be phases you'll have to approach it. You'll have to approach it in those phases in X time. The time frame will be the most stressful part. It won't be the technology. It won't even be the process. It'll be the time frame. Because time doesn't meet process times all the time. That's more reality than Microsoft, though.
Okay, we have a question from LinkedIn. LinkedIn seems to be rocking today. Still testing Autopilot feature. However, in Autopilot scenario, if the vendor is importing the hardware hashes to your Azure tenant, how would you trust that those are valid and not misused by attackers?
I don't have a good answer for that one. I mean, I don't have a good answer for that one. If your vendor is actually putting the hashes in there, you gave them the ability to do
There
that.
are some serious, well,
So there's some trust issues in certain places.
well now, there's a vendor relationship, there's a partner relationship. There are so many channels that have to go through, and anytime you are having this done on your behalf, it does require your delegation to them. So at the end of the day, you are in control of, and well, not just you, but Microsoft as well. But if they're worried about things like a Autopilot equivalent of, what was that thing years back with Silverfish or something with the supply chain hack? Yeah.
I would, I can tell you what I would do. This isn't a Microsoft thing, it's a anything. If you're going to give somebody access to your tenant, any type of access, you need to make sure the right authentication's there, conditional access, and two-factor authentication. That would be me. There's no way I wouldn't do those three. That would be my answer.
We have another question. Why Intune over Jamf for macOS management? This is a Windows show. At least for today. We will have a macOS show coming up. But anyway, our producers, for whoever asked that question, we do have a link to the Tech Takeoff session on Mac Management Ready, aka.mstt/Intune Mac NGMT with Arnab, Neil, and Ernesto. Oh, Neil Johnson. Yeah, that's a good guy. So is Arnab too.
Yeah, well, really good.
Yeah. It's going to be good stuff there. All right.
So I've worked with organizations that continue to run multiple config manager sites that works well in their distributed IT environment, so they can control different parts of the estate. And then, doing nothing into in the first look, maybe not the same level of delegated access. You kind of speak to that.
Well, I mean, this is where if I was back PFE, hey, customer with multiple sites that they had before, pull up a whiteboard, figure out what their design and architecture needs to be. Yeah, there's a few different things you can do in Intune, but it's not as deliberate or black and white, right? With SCCM, you can literally draw a line and say this primary sites for US, this primary sites for Asia Pac, this one is for something else, right? It's not going to be that logical, physical separation that way. You could do some things with Intune. You could create 3 different tenants, but then you got 3 different problems. How do they share data and things like that? You could put them all under one umbrella, but then how do you RBAC that enough? Is the RBAC capabilities even enough? So that's where I would say you'd have to whiteboard something like that to figure out what the customer wants, because there are a few different scenarios that could work.
We're seeing over on the intra and on the Defender and Purview side, the leveraging of the this RBAC 2.0 thing with the admin units and whatnot. Do we have that kind of innovation coming to Intune down the road?
I'm not in those circles, but I don't know why those conversations wouldn't be happening.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of any work happening though.
Okay. Good to know. You were on camera too, by the way. Our producer panned to you.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. I want to kind of make sure that everyone in the room got a chance to ask a question or speak if they wanted to.
Last minute questions from the room?
I mean, you're our special guest, technically.
Yeah, because I'd be in my basement.
Yes, sir.
I do have one question. There's a lot of tools out there in IT that are scripts. PS80T, for example. And one of the things that I've heard a lot of the consternation about moving to Windows 11 is the announcement of deprecation of BB scripts. And I think a lot of people are concerned about tools breaking in the Windows 11 world that have worked for a decade. Do we know if that deprecation of BB script in Windows 11 is a hard or soft deprecation? Will like PSADT actually break on Windows 11 in the future?
I can't answer that with any authority. We've heard about it even internal. I've talked to some of those teams. I don't know any definition of like what does that deprecation mean. So right, as a PM, like we try to figure out what certain words mean. I don't know what this, I'm going to throw the air quotes, what that means. So I would say keep following the blogs, because if we were to do something like that, I'm sure there'd have to be some type of huge announcement and some
So
weird
Steve, yeah, you could understand that lack of clarity
Well,
causes like a hesitation to move to 11. Because if there was clarity, like we knew it wasn't going to break, right? That would remove some.
So let's talk context here. Deprecation means we've stopped forward development on it, pretty much. And that means at some point it's going to be removed. And so the valid question when you see something has been deprecated is, when is this going to disappear? Now, I will say that if there are concerns and there are problems and timeline issues with getting tools off of VBScript is going to have potentially a negative impact, we encourage you to file that feedback as well. There is history of support life cycles being extended for that same reason. There is precedence for that reason. MDOT, for example. I mean, MDOT is still in support, mainly because of certain tools that weren't migrated over to the native Windows platform, like AGPM. And so for those reasons, things were extended out. And I only use that as an example because if it is a concern, please file that feedback as well. Okay, so time to wrap. A little bit of final thoughts here. Danny, what are some of your final thoughts?
Definitely explore Windows 11. Definitely explore Intune. If you're not, I think everybody already is though. So yay, kudos to you guys. Windows 11, secure platform, I would say, adding on to what Steve said, secure platform that works with the hardware, helps you secure not just the software, but the hardware. That's it. That's all I got.
Windows 11 struggles, file feedback. That's my final thought, because we have proven to have listened to customer feedback on Windows 11. And yes, sir.
Is there feedback channels that are the most recommended feedback channels?
If it's
When you say file feedback, where?
when it comes to Windows 11, definitely leverage the feedback hub, because your feedback hub is a direct pipeline into our back-end development tools.
Okay, thanks.
All right, cool.
And of course, the tech community, as my producer just reminded me as well. All right, so that concludes this special episode of Unpacking Endpoint Management, live from the Microsoft Denver office. As special guest of the MEM user group, we'd like to thank our host, the MEM user group board. And of course, we look forward to seeing you in 2024. Look for the schedule for our next 2 or 3 episodes. And we hope everyone has a happy holiday season for whatever holidays you may be celebrating. And signing off for my colleague Danny Guillory and myself. Thank you.